When any parent or grandparent comes into the hospital, it's, how did this happen? I never thought this would happen. I didn't know this could happen. I didn't know that they would be able to pull the trigger or do anything like that.
In reality, we're talking about an 8-year-old child. An 8-year-old child that won't get a chance to be a news reporter, police chief, or anyone else because of a tragic circumstance involving adults who didn't think enough to secure a weapon.
It keeps happening despite all the pleas for parents to lock up their weapons. 8-year-old Ajanae Graham, the latest victim.
Shortly after 12 p.m. on September 13th, Detroit police were called to a home in the 8800 block of Hayden on Detroit's west side. When they arrived, they would find a heartbreaking and traumatic scene.
A beautiful little girl with a big smile and a bright future, and now all of it gone because she and her brother found a gun. Police at a home on Hayden near Joy on the city's west side, the home where an 8-year-old girl was shot in the neck and shoulder and killed just before noon on Tuesday.
Ajanae and her 10-year-old brother were playing at home as kids normally do, when at some point her brother located an unsecured gun. Soon afterwards, the neighbors heard a loud boom, prompting them to rush to the home. Once inside, they found an injured Ajanae with her brother beside her, both alone inside of the home. Instead of waiting for their mother to return home, neighbors immediately called authorities for help. They ultimately decided to take Ajanae to the nearest firehouse since the ambulance took too long to arrive. First responders eventually arrived at the firehouse and took Ajanae to the nearest hospital, where she was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. Police immediately worked to get a search warrant for the home, where Police Chief White believed they would find the firearm used in the incident. He showed up to the scene hours later. Her 10-year-old brother was also taken to the hospital and was being administered medical attention after officers noted the conditions inside the home were quite concerning, but nothing too severe.
She is a very nice little girl. She had double promoted, 8 years old, in the 4th grade.
She was a good kid, and she just kept trying to breathe.
Neighbors ran to help, but it was too late.
We had to physically put her into a vehicle because the ambulance would not show up.
Somebody ran up and said, please take her to the hospital. I was running down there. Somebody beat me there. So when they beat me there, they put her in the car. She had no life in her. I just started praying for her.
We tried to help her, but it didn't work out. I just hate that because it's a tragedy for kids that happen to children every day.
Relatives identified the child as Ajanae Graham.
Detroit police have responded to a number of shootings involving youths in 2022. Last month, police began investigating a separate child shooting when a 3-year-old got a hold of an assault-type rifle gun. It's one of many incidents that police have been called to this year. A 2-year-old was hurt in the same week in a drive-by shooting, while a 13-year-old was fatally shot over a dispute over a cell phone in July. Ajanae's family was devastated after learning about her death. They say she did not deserve to have her life taken this way or fashion. She was a loving niece, cousin, sister, daughter, granddaughter, and so much more. Not only was Ajanae's family affected by her death, but also members of the community. A family member set up a GoFundMe page to cover the funeral expenses. 31-year-old Erica Sade Graham, the mother of both Ajanae and her 10-year-old brother, was charged with 1 count of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree child abuse, and 3 counts of felony firearm. She was arraigned Thursday afternoon in 36th District Court and given a $150,000 personal bond.
The neighborhood has a sense of heaviness tonight. Behind me, you can see balloons and candles laying on the doorstep of what was Ajanae Graham's home.
Obviously, the charges here are serious, resulting from another very, very tragic situation where loaded firearms are left within the reach of children, and now Ms. Graham has lost one of her children to a gunshot wound.
Thursday, a Wayne County judge charged 31-year-old Erica Graham to 1 count of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree child abuse, and 3 counts of felony firearm in a hearing that, at times, is hard to watch. It's alleged that Graham's 10-year-old child found an unsecured handgun in their home when Graham was not there and fired it, killing his 8-year-old sister, Ajanae Graham.
It is something that I struggled with. The number of these cases lately is so tragic and puts people on notice that leaving these firearms in this way creates a danger to children.
2022 data from the CDC shows that firearm deaths are the #1 killer among children and teens. Data from healthchildren.org says in homes with guns, the likelihood of an accidental death by shooting is 4 times higher. Since January 1st of this year, in Detroit alone, 65 children have been injured and 12 killed as a result of guns.
Okay, thank you. So I understand there's no change in the government's position.
With Graham beside herself, the judge allowed her to return home with a GPS tether, a personal bond of $150,000, and a heart-wrenching lesson.
I don't think that Ms. Graham will ever again in her life put a firearm within the reach of her children. I can't imagine a harder way to learn a lesson.
Erica Graham will have a GPS tether with home confinement. The probable cause conference is scheduled for September 30th at 8:30 a.m., and the preliminary examination is scheduled for October 7th. Police Chief White describes the situation as very tragic and another case of a child being victimized by gun violence. Police are also looking at questions over child endangerment during the investigation.
The 10-year-old, have you been able to speak with this child?
They are. They're going to do something called Kids Talk with the child. We've got some concern for some other things that we're working on with the child now. So he's going to get medical attention as well as investigated.
And can you expound on that at all with the medical attention for this child?
We just want to make sure the child is okay. We found some conditions inside the home that are quite concerning. So before we get him into an investigative process, we want to make sure that all of his needs are met medically and that he's okay. Nothing too severe, but we just want to make sure he's still a child despite what he's potentially involved in.
And you have the gun as well?
We are getting a search warrant on the home, and we're going to let that process play out. We're confident that we're going to recover a weapon.
Can you talk about the actions of neighbors in all of this? Did they actually try to transport her over to the firehouse here?
Yeah, so we're looking into all of that. Apparently, the mother arrived at the home shortly after the incident. What we're looking into right now is how the child got to the firehouse and then subsequently taken to the hospital. We believe that the mother or a neighbor may have transported the child to the firehouse, which is just less than a quarter mile away from this location.
And then were they able to take the child to the hospital from there?
I think what may have happened, and again, preliminary, subject to change, but the information I have is that the EMS responded to the firehouse. The firehouse was able to stabilize or attempt to stabilize the child to no avail, and the child was ultimately transported to the hospital. I don't know if the child expired at the firehouse or at the hospital.
So it's just to say, how many of these have we had, Chief?
Too many. I mean, we've got to get tired of this. There's no words I can say. I mean, you've heard me say all of the words that I can say about this. This is tragic. I've got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old in a house with an unsecured weapon. I've got kids that should be in school, so it shouldn't have happened. The gun shouldn't have been left there. They shouldn't even be there to have the gun left there. They should be in class. But unfortunately, I've got an 8-year-old now that's deceased. And if, we're going to find out who did it and what happened. I don't want to speak to that right now, but, some really tragic factors that we're looking at that suggests, what happened.
It appears her own brother, and like you said, neither one of them should have been there. They should have been in school.
It could have been that, or it could have been that the child got a hold of the gun herself. But we'll know in the next few hours. We've got awesome investigators on the ground. But, yes, we're going to do an investigation, and yes, we'll be able to likely close the case. But in reality, we're talking about an 8-year-old child. An 8-year-old child that won't get a chance to be a news reporter, police chief, or anyone else because of a tragic circumstance involving adults who didn't think enough to secure a weapon and leave 2 kids at home with it. Just awful, absolutely awful. And we got to quit dancing around it. It's responsibility. That's what you have to have. If you're going to have a gun in your home, you need to have responsibility with the gun, period.
And do we know anything about the weapon yet? Because obviously you don't have it in your hands yet.
Yeah, after we get our search warrant, we'll recover it, and we'll run it, and we'll find out if it's stolen and all that. That really, adds to charges, but means zero because you've got an 8-year-old that won't bring back. But we'll get to the bottom of that. We got child abuse on the scene, and they're going to look at the parental responsibility and all those things that I've said a zillion times. But what does that do to bring the 8-year-old back? Nothing. And then this needs to be the last one. We need to be serious enough, to anyone who's listening, to say this will be the last one. We're done with it. But how many have we had this summer?